Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from Bangalore in India is Priyanka Keswani. Hi, Priyanka. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Vasco. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So, Priyanka is a seasoned Agile coach with a firm belief in innovation, continuous improvement, and focus on Agile transformation in the organization. With more than 14 years of experience, she has worked across various domains. And she started as a QA manager, then became a Scrum Master, and then Agile coach. We will talk about that journey for sure in the next few episodes. And outside the work, she enjoys listening to music, dancing, traveling, and networking with people. So Priyanka, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Thanks, Vasco. It's really privileged to be part of Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And as you briefly covered about my introduction, my journey, how started as a Scrum Masters, I'll quickly share that journey. So one day, BU had broke the news stating that we as an organization, we are moving towards the agile ways of working. And that time, agile was more of a buzzword back then industry, as we all know. And during that time, I was leading a QA team as a QA manager. That time, my responsibilities were hiring, developing, ensuring end-to-end qualities of a QA team. So, as a first step in any agile initiative or any initiative, we all went through the trainings, right, to understand what agile is, what are the different frameworks, what are the different roles. And during that training, I got more information about the role called Scrum Master. I was aware about the Scrum Master because as agile was a buzzword, Scrum Master role was a buzzword. But when I got to know Scrum Master role is like influencing people, empowering teams, ensuring self-organizing teams, motivation, and more on that, working on organically shifting the mindset and the culture. So this role, I was really fascinated for that role when I heard about it. And as I always been an influencer, collaborator, and a people person, so I shared my things to my BU head, and thanks to my BU head, because of his trust, I got opportunity to play a role of a Scrum Master. And after that, I never looked back. I continued my journey as a Scrum Master, then Agile Coach, SPC Safe Program Consultant, and as an Agilist, I continued to serve people and organization in their Agile journey and enable them to adopt the new ways of working. So this is how my journey started as a Scrum Master.
So Priyanka, I'm sure many of our listeners kind of identify with this story, right? Like an organization starts adopting Agile, you learn about Scrum Master, then you get a chance to try it out. Maybe you find that it is your calling, your vocation, as it were. But of course, and today's Monday, we want to explore a story that may be related to this first few years as a Scrum Master or not. It could be a recent story, but we want to explore a story where you, as a Scrum Master, you did your best, but at that time, your best was just not good enough. We talk about these failures because we want to learn from them. We want to learn from your story, Priyanka. So tell us one of those stories.
I believe always we should learn from the failures, and it's really good to share with others. So if others are also experiencing that failure, that how I am and how we adopt or acknowledge that failure will be a good learning for the others. So during the initial days of the transformation, we all know there is a resistance, right? If I mean everyone would have definitely faced. So one of the Scrum team where I was a Scrum Masters, as it was the initial days and transition was happening from the component teams to the feature teams, because in waterfall we all know we have the dedicated teams, we have the silos, but in agile we want a feature teams, we want a cross functional teams. So the team members had come from the different expertise on the different product components, and they continued to focus only on the stories of the different components, right? So as a Scrum Master, I suggested them to pull stories outside your expertise, but they didn't agree on that. And initial days hiccups are there.
I'm sure that this story is something that many of our listeners have gone through, right? Like
Right.
as Scrum Masters, we start to say, hey, wait a minute, they're separating all their work, and we get all of these stories that are either front end, back end style stories, or they are, they are never complete because some parts are done, but other parts are not done. So, what happened when you asked the team members to start pulling stories outside their specialty? What happened then?
That's why, I mean, as resistance is there, no one wanted to come out from their comfort zone, because I know more about front end. I will work on the front end. But because of the suggestion, they said no, we'll focus on our comfort zone. I suggested them also, let's do this slicing vertically. Let's have a story where we have a front end, back end, middleware as a part of story. No one agreed on that. It was like, I'll work on the front end story, we'll finish the QA. Back end was like, we'll work on the back end story, we'll finish the QA. And the similar was the middleware. But what happened? It was like a sub teams inside the Scrum team, and which further led to the dependencies, silos, less collaboration, and the biggest impact was delayed in the delivery of product. Because
Yeah.
again, it was like, we are working as a sub teams. It was like a waterfall inside the Scrum team.
Exactly. It was like we got almost everything ready, but we're missing middleware, so we can't deliver anything, right? And I'm sure, like at least one of the patterns that I've witnessed in that kind of situation is also that some team members get overworked, while others are saying, "Hey, we have nothing to work on." Did that happen too in that team?
Exactly. Because most of the time, the front end was more, because it was like a mobile app, right? So we had to focus more and more on the front end aspects, UI aspects, and all. And middleware was like, we already had an API. So there was not much to do on the middleware. So that the team members, those who were focusing or who had an expertise on the middleware, they were like less occupied. But after 2, 3 sprints, everyone realized, and even the management had come into the picture in the retros. After that, we discussed that if we need a cross functional team, if we have to build a team where everyone is an expert, it's not the silos inside the team. We as a team decided, okay, let's take an approach. Every sprint, everyone will take a very small story outside their expertise, outside their comfort zone, and then it becomes a new habit. And from the next sprint, and also we kept the capacity. It was very important, we kept the capacity of an expert to support a person for whom the story is new. So like this, they started working together, and we saw a shift towards the collaborative approach, where each team member were equally participating even in the refinement meetings. One of the drawback was also Vasco, refinement meetings were also happening in silos. Because if it is a front end story, the back end person was like, why should I attend it if it is a front end story?
Of
So
course.
those things got resolved gradually, but definitely I would say it is not going to happen in a one sprint. It took almost 6 to 8 sprints to reach to that level. And one of the biggest initiative, the team mentioned that every sprint, 1 hour, we will focus on knowledge sharing or the lesson learned. And the good part was, knowledge sharing will not be by an expert. It will be by a person who's working on a story out of their comfort zone. So what they have learned, they shared. So this really resulted in a good collaboration and the cross-functional team.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think that you already mentioned it as you introduced this story, that the required change from component teams to feature teams is a critical aspect of agile adoption. As you very well illustrated in this story, if we continue to work in component teams, we naturally push the teams towards waterfall, right? Because we're not going to know what's front end, middleware, and back end unless somebody has designed it, right? And if you have to design everything before you even have the stories, then you just introduce the design aspect into the process, right? And then you split
Exactly.
everything up,
Right.
and then you have to independently develop these parts. And then because these parts are developed independently, the end to end test can only happen at the end, which then means that we've now added another step into the waterfall, right? So design, development, and testing. And obviously, once the testing is done, the team members are already working on some other stories, obviously. And the testers come in with bugs and they go like, well, it's not a front-end bug, it's a middleware bug. And the middleware goes like,
Exactly.
it's not a middleware bug, it's a back-end bug. And we're back to waterfall if we take the component team approach.
Exactly. And it was really a big shift for the organization also. So it was not only for the team, because we are used to of certain ways of working, right? So it was a big shift, and it was a lesson learned for the other teams also. So gradually everyone started adopting this way, and we had a buy-in from management also, that see, in a one day it's not going to become a cross-functional team.
Yeah,
It takes
absolutely.
time.
Takes time and it takes effort, right? As you know.
Of course. So it was really good, and at the end, team members were also motivated, because it was learning for them. It was a growth for their career path also, because if you're just knowing middleware, you have learned end-to-end aspect of the product. So eventually, team members also realize it's a great career path for them also, great learning for them also.
Absolutely. Priyanka, it's been a great story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Vasco.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests helped their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.